Welcome to the official podcast where the bombs get thrown. I'm your host, Maeshaila Bogan, and I introduce to you the Mike Bomb Podcast. Enjoy.
I was born to do. 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 I've been sitting right here, locked in this room all through the night, trying to write every second of my life in this mic. It's been a fight just to get him to listen and pay attention. Punching till my knuckles are bleeding, ain't made a dent, not to mention ain't got a dollar to my.
All right, so welcome to the Mike Bomb Podcast with your host, Maeshaila, your co-host, Kaila Lewis, and just welcome. Obviously, we're here. We're giving a recap of NFL Week 1 and along with the WNBA Finals. So let's just start with the NFL. I think I can speak for both of us that this week was just the most absurd week ever in football in a long time.
It was rough. It was rough out here in these streets.
Yeah, it's just extremely crazy because the ending of the games, the way the games went, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, oh my God, that game took like at least a good 5 years off of me, 2 to 5 years. Obviously 23, now I feel like I'm 25 hitting my 30s. That's how much back and forth there was.
I was gonna say, are you okay over there? Like, I feel like yours was a little less or a little more chaotic than mine.
Yeah. All the way because your game ended in a tie, but it's like
but we also cut our kicker yesterday.
Yeah, both kickers missed in my game. Like Chris Boswell missed, it hit the dang post. Then you had McPherson missing. I'm like, oh God, does anybody want to win today but our defense? Does anybody want to win? And it's like, I didn't know. It was at one point I was afraid Cincinnati was going to come back and win. And I'm like, you know what? If this happens, fire the offense. This is your fault.
I don't even know who to blame in our game. I'm out of market, so I was able to catch highlights, but I wasn't able to watch the game. And obviously my family is still in the Indy area. So my dad was like, by the time I looked and started doing something else, I was just like, oh, we're gonna lose, because last time I checked the score, it was 20-6. One of my friends was like, are you okay? And I was like, I think we're losing. I've just given up. And he's like, no, y'all are tied. And I was like, oh, we are tied, and there's 10 seconds left. And next thing I know, our kicker missed the winning kick in the overtime. And I was just like, we're starting off great.
Right. It was just to the point where you couldn't even put in your head all that happened. It was like I went to sleep partially from the Dallas and the Tampa Bay game because I was so worn out from what I saw 1 p.m. games. And then here we are back here again for another 1 p.m. game Tuesday. So it's like Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, obviously defense is what won the Steelers that game. Them and Chris Boswell, he made up for missing that field goal first trial. More of the story, man. I don't get it. See, and then now remember when I told you all the Bengal fans was in my mentions saying how they were going to dance on this defense? Now wants to use this defense as an excuse of why they lost the game. Even though they were the ones to force the 5 turnovers, you were supposed to dance on them. You were supposed to just come in here and blank up, destroy them in your season home opener, and you didn't. Your offense, first of all, the pick 6 was like the first score of the game. That put the Steelers on the board. You take that away, you possibly could have won that game. It's just so funny because everything goes back to that high power offense that was supposed to just dominate regardless of who was missing and who wasn't. Now they want to use every excuse in the book, and it was to a point they whooped them so bad on that offensive line. TJ's now hurt and out for a month. That's how bad the beatdowns was. And honestly,
it was a pec injury, right?
Yeah, it would have been a blowout, but we dodged the bullet with TJ though. We definitely did, because what was feared to be a season ended is only like he's only going to be missing for 1/4 of the season, which I'm perfectly content with our schedule, with who we play and where we're playing them at. I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't think, we would need TJ Watt for that. I don't think we should need him to carry the load for against the Patriots, the Browns, and then you have, I forgot who else, the Jets. Those should be wins regardless, because come on, look what we have, look what they have.
How do you feel about the Browns squeaking out a win with all of the controversy that they've got going on?
Oh my God, Cleveland.
Yeah.
I was shocked. I picked Carolina to win that game at home. I was shocked Jacoby Brissett really went into Carolina, which is now Baker's turf, pretty much, with Christian McCaffrey in his corner, and beat him. Obviously, the Browns kicker is the MVP of that game because he won them the game. But Baker, obviously, rightfully so, bitter about the loss. You could say not too happy about it because the way the Browns treated him at the end with the Deshaun Watson trade and the contract negotiations, etc., versus how they lost the game. So,
yeah, right. And I mean, granted, Jacoby only had one touchdown. I'm not going to debate that his performance was not great. But I know a lot of people will probably agree with what I'm about to say, and I know a lot of people think he is very stuck up and comes off kind of as an asshole, for the lack of a better word. And I might be biased because his time in Indy with the Colts was lined up with my time with Indy and the Colts. And as somebody that knows him somewhat well, he's that way with everybody. He doesn't just come off that way. He's just a little bit less of an asshole if he likes you. But like I don't know if it's the same in the Browns locker room. But he had the Colts locker room 100% behind him. Like, they loved him as a leader. So I'm hoping that their next game he can have his life in order and give them more than one touchdown. Because the talent is there. I just don't know why it doesn't show up in games.
yeah.
Like, I can't explain that at all.
Yeah, obviously, the way you feel about the Browns right now is how I feel about the Bengals. The talent is there. That was my favorite week. And people are gonna be like, oh, even though it took 5 years off of you because that's your team. It's not even the fact that the Steelers won. It's the fact that their fans, their players, even their media outlets from the Bengals just talked so much crap. And for an underdeveloped, I will say, I'm expecting to see better this week and beyond coming up. But as an underdeveloped Steelers offense, the fact that they took you to the wire, or you had to go to the wire with them, people say that's a bad sign for the Steelers, but this is what you was expecting from them based off your sport takes. You was not expecting Cincinnati to have 5 turnovers with a pick 6. It's just, I don't get how that part gets overlooked. They were supposed to dance on this defense that caused this, and you didn't. If anything, it's like Minka Fitzpatrick had the most fun with Joe Burrow throws, arguably more than any of them besides Jamar Chase, who regardless had a great game. Obviously, the middle finger picture is now viral, so you would definitely see a lot of that on social media. But it's just like, what happened? Let's just explain the part that the side of the ball that was supposed to win you the game is what lost you the game, and now you want to make up excuses. But what they didn't get, this Steeler defense is just coming together. They didn't give a crap about. They did not factor in the Steeler defense and what their abilities are and what they're capable of doing when they're all on the field and when they're all healthy. They did not give a crap. They just say, you know what? They compared offense to offense, and rightfully so, because on paper, Cincinnati does look like the better offense. And based off these past 2 years, you can definitely argue that. But it's just like, you were supposed to destroy this defense that you knew this offense was coming into this game with, and you didn't. You didn't. It's like,
look, there's a win in the win column. 0-0-1 right now, against the conference opponent. But again, I mean, for me, I will give the Colts all of the excuses at the moment. Darius Leonard, well, Shaquille Leonard, it wasn't playing, coming
Exactly.
off of back surgery and all that, and he's a big voice and kind of motivator, and not having his presence on the field, I feel like that's the only reason it was so tight. But also, as offensively, T.Y. Hilton was a huge factor in those Houston games.
Yeah.
And he was, watching at home, coming off watching his kid play at one of the local high schools and dominated on the high school field. He's, in dad mode now. But I don't know if anybody caught it, but there's a clip of Michael Pittman Jr. doing TY's celebration dance after one of his touchdowns. But again, that's a huge missing energy factor that you don't have on the field in a game like this. And TY was the king of petty every time the Colts went into Houston. I can't remember if it lined up with Halloween a few years back, but TY walked in to the Texan Stadium with a clown mask on and dominated that game. And I believe we also won. So again, that's another big presence, presence and veteran mentality that you no longer have in that locker room. Granted, TY had been with the team for several years and, just kind of been plagued with injury the last 3 years. So, I mean, maybe it was time to let him go and not re-sign him. But again, that's another big offensive presence that you miss. So now you're depending on a young receivers core to get you through it. And in my honest opinion, the keeping of Ashton Doolin over a T.Y. Hilton, not my favorite thing, just because, you had that veteran presence, and then, bringing back in Reggie Wayne, who, whenever the league decides to let him into the Hall of Fame, should probably do that. But again, having Reggie Wayne, who literally passed the torch to TY, as far as this is your team, your wide receivers room now. Could you imagine those two together?
Yeah, that would have been
on a coach-player relationship, given how they started.
Yeah, that right there would have been nasty. I would not want to play that duo.
I'm just saying, but they when I was there, they didn't pay me for those takes. I am strictly a couch analyst of the Colts now, so clearly you have to take my takes with a grain of salt.
I mean, you make some valid points here. Not having T.Y. Hilton is like a type of blow to your wide receiving room. So that could have probably, you probably could have used them last Sunday against the Texans. But let's just think about it. It's just the fact that, you didn't have Leonard there. So that right there is another factor. That's arguably your best defensive player. He is, the TJ Watt of your defense. And then it's just, you just wasn't there just yet, health-wise. And people don't understand how well divisional games can really play out for either party, not just within the conference, but within your division. And it's this pretty much the energy that you will bring into a conference game, depending on, the importance of the game and how it can factor your seeding within the conference. You're going to come in a divisional game with a whole nother energy, because these are your rivals. I understand the Steelers are going to come out this Sunday full blasted. Obviously, it's the home opener. They want to make up for the loss last year to the Raiders in their home opener. More importantly, they got some unfinished business with the Patriots. So definitely looking forward to that, as I will be attending. But I already knew they want to get their hands more on Joe Burrow than they want to get their hands on Mac Jones, because they don't know much about Mac Jones yet, but they know about Joe Burrow. They heard the things that were said, and they just say, you know what? You're not doing this again with us. You're not. We're about to teach you a lesson, and we're about to teach you a cold-blooded lesson of why the AFC North is what it is within physicality and why it's been this way for years. And the crazy thing about all of that is that everyone wants to sit here and it's just that game. I don't know. I really don't have much words instead. I'm just happy that the Steelers won that game. But I'm expecting a better performance this week and, at home against the Patriots, who is clearly not on paper as good as the Bengals are offensively. But divisional games, conference games can come with different type of energy, if that makes sense. Because like I said, these guys in your conference are like your semi-rivals, but then the people in your division, the teams in your division that you play are like your bitter rivals. Like the Steelers and the Ravens, you can expect more physicality and a way different type of energy in that upcoming matchup than you can in this upcoming matchup against the Patriots. But you can also say that about the Steelers and the Bengals last week compared to this week's matchup, because it's just like, yeah.
Well, at least one of us feels confident in our
Yeah,
divisional game.
yeah.
That's coming up this week. We're playing Jacksonville in Jacksonville, and I will have to go back and double check this stat, but I don't believe we've won in Jacksonville since 2012.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's the game last season that cost us the playoffs.
Yeah.
So again, we're coming off a, division tie, going on the road to another road game that we haven't won in quite a while. So I'm like I said, I'm glad one of us feels confident in our team.
I'm semi-confident. I'm semi-confident. I won't say I'm fully confident because I know the history between the Steelers and Patriots. And I feel like if this is the time for the Steelers to take advantage, it will be now. Take advantage right now with Mac Jones coming in banged up with or without TJ Watt there.
How are we feeling about that 8:20 game with the Bears and the Packers?
That's going to be an interesting matchup. It depends on where it's at. I think it might be in Green Bay, but if it's in Green Bay, I'm picking the Packers.
Yep, it's at Lambeau.
Yeah. I got my money on the Packers. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to bounce back. I think that offense is going to bounce back, even though Justin Fields had an impressive performance this past Sunday against the 49ers. He was at home, and going to Lambeau Field, it's hard. It's hard to win there. People don't understand that, but people are so, hard on Aaron Rodgers because postseason wise, he hasn't been that much successful there. But
you have to show up to be successful or unsuccessful.
Right. But regular season, correct me, he's been that dude. Like, I can't recall the last time I'd seen anyone outside of the postseason go into Lambeau Field and beat Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers since AR has taken over for Brett Favre in 2010. So it's going to be tough for the Bears. Can the Bears pull it off? Obviously, yes, because it's football. Anyone can get beat on any Sunday, on any given day, or any given Sunday, which you and I both know from week one. That's what it taught us. I mean, it's one thing to take away from that in one sentence. Anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere can get beat because anything can happen in the NFL. You don't know. On paper, you're like, okay, we can pick this team because we like what we see. But when, the games go live and it's like, it's here, it's a whole nother story. And that's what we saw. It's like, we were not expecting this. We were not ready for this, but we're glad that we got it because now we know the season that we're most likely going to be getting. And it's going to be a great one regardless. But the Bears and the Packers game, I'm gonna go with
Gonna be a
Green
good one.
for safer bet. I'm gonna go with the Packers there. I think Aaron Rodgers is gonna chew up his receivers in practice today. You can expect a big game for Dylan and Aaron Jones in the run game. Chicago definitely has questions there defensively, but in their run game, in their run defense. So I'm definitely picking them. Plus, I'm not ready to put my money on Justin Fields over Aaron Rodgers, especially with it being in Lambeau Field. So yeah, I'm gonna pick the Packers for that game, but I think the game is gonna be better than a lot of people think it is based off the way it looks on paper.
I don't disagree in I'm gonna give this to the Packers, but I will say from what I've heard, and I can't give away specifics of where I heard this from. But just hearing, from people around the team, Justin's been putting in work and it's not necessarily being reported on. It's gotten to the point where it's just like, Justin, you need to go home and like not think about football. Like you need to go home and not work. Like it's been put on security's radar, like send his ass home, like so he can get rest. Like just tell him to turn around, don't let him in the building so he can rest. So I feel like Justin feels like he might have a little bit to prove. So especially going up against somebody like Aaron Rodgers, regardless of how you feel about his off-field nonsense, like you can't argue that Aaron is a beast, like you can. So I think
His
Justin's
greatness is
taking,
undefined.
yeah. So I think Justin's taking that into account, and like I feel like he's also probably, giving the rest of the guys on his offense a little piece of his mind, going into next week to be like, yo, we gotta have it together.
Definitely.
Especially with that being a big rival.
Yeah. And I don't think Chicago defense though took kind to the words that Aaron Rodgers said when he pretty much told their fans that I own you when they went to Chicago, I believe was week
Last
5,
year.
week 6. Yeah. It
I
was
remember that
something like
conversation.
that. And I'm like, you really just told the Chicago Bears that,
A whole fan base.
right, that you owned them in their home base. That's like Ben in his prime, or Ben when he was here, going to Cleveland, telling Browns fans, oh yeah, I own you. It's just
Hey, that was
wow.
a
It's just, I mean,
let me hold my. Why don't you just hold my dick? That's pretty much what that conversation said to me. Hold my
yeah.
dick and watch this. Forget hold my beer. Hold my dick, and this is where we are.
I'm like, the fact that he just said that, the fact that he blatantly came out his mouth and said that, and it was only a 1-point score. I'm an Ohio State Buckeyes fan, so
So you've been watching Justin for a minute.
yeah, been watching him for a minute. So I definitely could tell you a lot about Justin Fields. And that's why I'm really praying that Chicago does something with him, because you got your quarterback. You just need an O-line. He just needs some weapons, a defense that can hold, and you'll see a lot in Justin Fields. He's honestly, to me, arguably, if not indefinitely, the best quarterback that year that got taken out that year in the draft. So it's like, and people are going to call me biased because I am a Buckeyes fan, but if you would have saw what I seen at Ohio State, and you would see it slowly transitioning into the NFL, then you would agree. You would be like, okay, you may have your disagreements and kinks here and there within that statement, but you would be like, yeah, I can definitely see this. This is why he was taken, I believe it was 5th overall in the draft, or I forgot where the Bears landed that year. But that guy's going to be motivated, and he understands that it's partially do or die this year for him, because based off what happened to him last year, they got rid of Matt Nagy, they put him in a new system. So far, he's doing, good numbers. He's not turning the ball over.
A former Colts system, might I add. But
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, the
Take
Colts,
it as you may.
right? Yeah, the Colts are known for being a great offensive team. They're known for being that.
Now, if we could just stick with a quarterback that's under the age of 35 longer than a year, but we'll
Yeah.
save that for another. We'll save that for when our teams play each other to have that discussion.
Yeah, Matt Ryan. I mean, if Ben would have came back, he would have been 40. So we're right there. But we would have been right there. But moral of the story is it's like we can expect a good game from Justin Fields, but I think it's just Aaron Rodgers' experience can come into factor. If the Bears defense, though, can slow down Aaron Rodgers and his receiving core, then we could be having a whole nother discussion because we know what Justin Fields can do to a defense individually with his mobility, his ability to read the defense, even though there's some little work to be done there, but he's only in his second year. So you cannot expect him to have a 5-year experience skill in 2 years within a bad organizational set like the Chicago Bears. You can't do it. They are developing. I must give them credit. They did look very good. I did not expect them to beat the 49ers. They did just that in the most craziest weather because it's like they were
The field was flooded.
They were celebrating in puddles. And I'm like, you know what? I am done with week 1. That's right there. I'm like at the Cincinnati game, at the you guys game. And then I'm like, you know what? 1 p.m. games, I am done with week 1. Give me 4 o'clock games and just give me the night game. But week 1 of the 1 p.m. games wore me out so badly. I can't even. I stayed through the 4 p.m. games, but I went to sleep, woke back up to the Dallas and the Tampa Bay game, which is semi a crazy outcome with the Bucks not scoring that many points, but holding Dallas to 3. That's something we can get into a little right now. But
how do you feel about all that craziness going on at the same time as the WNBA Finals?
God, I think they are really screwing these ladies over with that. Because here's the deal. Here's where I got a problem with. And I'm not sure who creates the schedule when the games are, but if you want the WNBA to get tons of views and reach millions of views, you're not to have the WNBA on the same times as the NFL. You should have had it on the day before. So if you know NFL Sunday is here, have WNBA on Saturday. Have it on Saturday or have it on Friday. Do not put it on a Thursday. Do not put it on a Sunday or Monday, because here's the deal. As much as you and I both love the WNBA, we must admit we love and we support them, especially me. But I know as of right now, they can't compete with the NFL, who's been around for 100 seasons, versus them, who's been around for only 30 years. It's just nearly impossible, if not exactly impossible. And we both know, and this is a sad case, that you have a lot of fans that just don't give a damn about women's sports as much as they care about men. And then you're gonna that was just not good for ESPN.
And women or WNBA fans, fight me later. I know I'm gonna sound like a terrible woman in sports saying this. I did not watch any games on Sunday. The WNBA wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah.
I was I didn't even look at scores on ESPN's app. My focus was on what does week 1 look like for the NFL. So,
yeah.
And, granted, this schedule was set in stone and released prior to the NFL releasing their schedule. So the NFL could have adjusted, but I think they knew what they were doing. I'm pretty sure they knew that they could get the ratings over
Definitely.
the WNBA. Granted, I will say, I think if this was a Candace Parker, Sue Bird situation, might be a little bit different, given that this was Sue's last year. And, but if we're being completely honest with ourselves, Candace might be out soon too.
Yeah.
That probably would have gotten more of my attention and interest, but the teams that we've got now, like I'm just like, oh, okay, that's cool and all, but like what is the NFL talking about right now? Was, like I said, that was my Sunday. Like I was more concerned into what the NFL was doing. And again, I get, women sports fans might be mad at me, not only from that standpoint, that I was more concerned about the NFL when, they've had instances that show that, women fans aren't their top priority, especially, like we mentioned, the Brown situation, like, which again, feel about that how you may. That's neither here nor there. I can definitely say, as a woman in sports, that I can't say that there's not an air of caution, that like I have like around players, and, just a sense of mindfulness, given situations like that. And I completely hear and understand that argument, but at the same time, like, we can't argue the fact of, there are sometimes that the product from a women's sports perspective is not there. But like you and I have previously talked about, watching our women's soccer national team, like I will gladly give them my viewership over our men's national team, because they're more interesting to watch. And again, as you and I have discussed, I watched a lot of women's college softball this past summer. Again, I was working with college softball partially, and I honestly never had any exposure to it, so I didn't know how exciting it was. So I was like, okay, like y'all gained a fan. I don't know completely what's going on. I mean, I know baseball rules, so I'm hoping those translate over similarly. But like, I didn't know how interesting that was, and was mad interested in, following some of the stories of some of the players like in that. And then, I mean, even now, well, even before the whole Duke and BYU volleyball situation, like I really didn't pay that much attention to college volleyball. And I was just like, I didn't know how intense volleyball games
they can
were.
get
So again, don't get me wrong, like there are definitely some products that I wish people did pay more attention to. And I can attest that, like, until I was involved myself in certain women's sports, like I just didn't know that, that product was there. And, you can argue that that's because the product's not pushed to get that viewership. But at the same time, like,
it's not promoted.
Yeah, it's not promoted. But like, again, if you're going to offer me NFL season week 1, like at the same time as the WNBA, I'm going to take week 1 of NFL football.
Right.
And just because, like I said, had it been Candace and Sue Bird, I might have felt a little bit differently. But again, it's the product.
Right.
Like,
it's about who you have.
Right.
I'm pretty bummed that we're not getting that, because we had Candace and Diana the previous freaking finals. I'm like, come on, y'all, Lord, why couldn't my girl Candace get Sue Bird and Diana? But yeah, like the WNBA finals, obviously game 3 will be, I think, Wednesday, and then you have game 4 scheduled for that, I believe that Thursday, that Friday.
Which the Thursday again is exact, like I just said, like you're putting it up against Thursday night football, which is not fair.
And then the Chargers and the Chiefs are playing in Arrowhead. That's stupid on the WNBA. You know that you're not going to be able to get more views. You're just now starting to peak proper viewership within publicity. You are still developing that audience gravitation, but it's just like, I don't.
But with them being about 30 years old, should that still be a situation that they're dealing with?
No, I don't think so. But just for a viewership standpoint, and the fact that like this, it's like, okay, let's flip it to one other day of the week that we know football is not going to be on, because now no one has an excuse to not watch us. You know what I mean? Just from that standpoint. But like you said, Aces and the Suns can be a real legit team, but we all know now who's going to win. I think Chicago and Las Vegas would have been a way better matchup than this because you got you got Candace Parker, you had Kalea Copper, you got Courtney Vandersloot versus Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, then you have Aja Wilson and it's Becky Hammon, that would have definitely been like, okay, we got to watch this because when you think of the WNBA right now, you think of those players. You don't really think of much of anyone from the Connecticut Sun, but the Sun had other plans. They defeated the Sky surprisingly in Chi-Town, which is why we're getting this matchup. You can definitely, though, put your money on the Aces to have a sweep because if they could beat Sue Bird with Brianna Stewart on them and Tina Charles and all them girls in Seattle, and then they could beat Natasha with, with them other girls in Washington, then I don't see how they can't wrap it up in Connecticut. I really don't. So I'm predicting a sweep for that one. I really am. I see the Aces sweeping and they just winning the WNBA Finals because I don't think the Sun has what it takes to keep up with the Aces. The Aces is just too much for anyone to overcome. They really are. Maybe the Sky because the experience level, but anyone else in the Eastern Conference, I don't see it at all. I don't.
And I know what I am about to say. The next few points I'm about to say are going to be very okay boomer-ish. So I'm just putting that warning, that label out there. So my prime of watching WNBA was closer to the time of it starting. So you can do the math on how old I am if you would like. And to further help with that math, I'm talking Cynthia Cooper, Cheryl Swoops, early Lisa Leslie.
Yeah.
And Tina Thompson, like those, that's what I'm saying. Where my prime in watching the WNBA was saying or started. And if we're being okay, well, before I get into this, to any of our listeners that fall into this category, please do not take this in a disrespectful manner. This is just more so me noting like how it has changed in my experience of watching and experiencing to now. During that time frame, the fan base, the fan base and the fan experience of WNBA games was more so catered to, like, if we're being honest, it was more catered to cisgender, two gender families. Like, that's kind of how it started. And as we gravitated and moved to now, like the idea that we've got a player that identifies as, I'm sure there are plenty more, but to my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, to now we've got a player that identifies as gender neutral. Do you know how many people would have gasped in the 90s that there is a player that is identifying as gender neutral? That would have never happened. And there were, like I said, more fan experiences that were geared toward, like I said, cisgendered, two gendered parent households. For example, there was a autograph signing for different, it must have been an all-star weekend sort of thing. There was an autograph session where all these players are there, and every player, full made up face and huge earrings, etc. And again, like I said, more geared toward family centered. Now that's not necessarily the thing, but that's where we are. And the product is just different.
Yeah, it's definitely different. But we are expecting better That's all that me and her both have for you. Me and Kaila both have for you. This episode, if you'll like, we'll definitely be talking more about sports and things like that. The next episode, thank you to you all for watching the Mike Bomb podcast. This is welcome to the Mike Bomb podcast, the podcast where the bombs get thrown. Thank you for tuning in to the latest episode. This is your host, Maeshaila, exiting out. But before I do,
this is my night, this is my pain, this is my life, this is what I was born to do, I was born to do, every new day, every new night, every new stage, every new fight, this is what I was born to do, I was born to do, fall to my knees every night and I pray, asking Lord let him hear, I got something to say, there's a fear out there and it's coming your way, don't let it stop you from living for what you were made, it's not